Well, it's a great pleasure for me to be back here at this congregation after an absence, I think, of almost 2 years. And I'm particularly pleased to be here because I'm joined in the very back pew by my wife, Maria, my sister-in-law, Verity Powell, my son, Billy Sinkford, and my first grandchild, Will Ryder Sinkford. Yeah, it's very good to be back, and I'm so glad that they're able to be here. We are living through complicated times, and that's almost become trite because people say it so often on the news and the commentators. On the one hand, Obama's election, for many of us at least, has opened the floodgates to a sense of hope about our political life that, frankly, I haven't felt in many, many years. He's the first African-American president, and he was elected based on promises of change and empowerment and hope. Change you can believe in, he said. Yes, we can. Si se puede. And even for those who voted for McCain last November, there is a sense, at least among most that I talk to, that they want to give him a chance because they know how important this time is for our nation. Now that, of course, accepts a couple of the most conservative talk show hosts that I'm not going to talk about here this morning. That would be a sermon for a different day. There's a real sense that hope is possible now, at least for many of us. And if you think that it's true just here in the United States, let me tell you that I was traveling to Africa on November 4th and traveled for the next 3 weeks to 6 countries in Africa, and they are even more excited than we are here. We'd be traveling down the street in a van or walking and be noticed as Westerners rather than Africans. I don't know how they noticed that. And the hands would go up, you know, Obama man, Obama man. The people in Kenya, of course, are particularly moved by his election, and even the folks in South Africa said to us that they'd like to borrow him for about 6 months because there were some things that they thought he could say to them that they needed to hear. Yeah, a real sense of hope. I had the privilege of actually being at the inauguration. Was that just a month ago? Yeah. Incredible. In Washington, D.C., and it's true that the experience was one almost of seeing the beloved community being created before my eyes. We actually never made it to the mall for the inauguration. Along with thousands of others, the gates to the mall were closed just as we were about 20 yards away. But the amazing thing was that despite that disappointment, there was no anger, there was no pushing, no shoving. People said, well, where do we go now? Well, I think I know a way down here, and people would follow that person. It was as if we were willing to trust each other for the first time in a long time. It was an amazing experience. In some sense, it felt almost as if we, the people, had taken America back, as if we'd taken America back. Now, at the same time that there is this incredible sense of at least the possibility of a grounded hope, we're living through a time of tremendous anxiety, tremendous anxiety. We don't know how bad the recession will become. We don't know how long it will last. We don't know how close it will come to our own lives. And frankly, we don't know whether the new and untested administration can do enough, quickly enough, to right the economic ship of state. We just don't know. So we're not sure about how we're to move forward. And the result, frankly, at least for me, is that I feel pulled in opposite directions. It almost feels a bit like emotional whiplash over and over again. First, the sense of hope, and then the news comes in about more jobs being lost. then the sense of hope, and I don't know which way to turn in any reliable sense. Even some of the events around the inauguration had that same quality for me. So, along with many others, and I would wager many here in this congregation, I was distressed at the selection of Rick Warren to offer the invocation at the inauguration. He stands for things, frankly, with which I strongly disagree. So I was in that place of fear and anxiety. Was this going? And then Gene Robinson was selected to give the invocation at the music service just in front of the Lincoln Memorial a couple of days before, and that's a good thing in my world. And then Reverend Lowry, of course, one of the great civil rights religious leaders, was asked to give the benediction at the invocation. You can applaud, you can even say amen to that if you want. And so as I was looking at this whole trajectory, from Rick Warren to Gene Robinson to Lowry, I thought, that's actually not too bad. It's not too bad for someone who claims he wants to reach across the aisles, but it still had left me with the experience of not knowing what to feel, whether it was fear and anxiety or celebration and hope. It's emblematic of our times. And I think the reason that it's emblematic of our times is that we truly are living through what I call a kairos moment. This is a moment of extreme openness, when it's clear that the way we have been living cannot go on unchanged. It's clear that we have to do some things differently. And the only question is what we will do differently and how, not whether. It's a very important moment. We know that the old ways will not win us through. We know that the politics of divisiveness, politics of horse trading, and of name-calling, we know that politics as usual can't save us in this unusual time. For progressive folks to just take America back, just replace the past conservative politics with an equally strident progressive politics will not do. So how do we navigate? How do we navigate through this time of both hope and anxiety? How do we navigate through this period when our spirits seem to be in a perpetual state of whiplash? How do we navigate? There's a story told in the Cherokee tradition of a grandfather who was talking to his grandson. And he said, each of us, each human being has two wolves in our spirit. The first wolf is good. That's the wolf of compassion, forgiveness, and love. The second wolf is evil. That's the wolf of fear, of greed, and of hatred. And the grandfather said, and the two wolves are battling in our spirits. The grandson thought for a minute and he said, but grandfather, which wolf wins? And the grandfather said, the one you feed. The one you feed. How will we navigate through this period? What are we called to do in this time? There is one thing that I know, and that is that both progressives and conservatives have to find a new way of being in the world. We need to find a new way of being in relationship one to another. And liberal religious folks, like us, have to learn some new habits as well. You see, we don't get off the hook here at all. It's been my experience, and I've had the privilege of being one of our primary public spokespersons for the last 8 years, is that we have honed the art of criticism to a fine, fine level. For 8 years now, we have been the first up to criticize policies of the administration and indeed to criticize the advocacy of the religious right, to criticize. We can criticize at the drop of a hat. And one can question, even though we were called to do it, whether that has served us well over the last 8 years. If you judge that by our rate of success, I think there is a good conversation there about how well that approach has served us, be that as it may. And because we have stepped into criticism at the drop of a hat, now that we have political leadership that is at least closer to where most of our own points of view lie, the danger is that we will move into self-righteous